comes from the Old Testament in Proverbs 31, verses 25 through 31. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her the reward she has earned, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. Lord, add his blessings to these readings.
Thank you. So, of course, today is Mother's Day, and I want to share a couple stories with you. So there was two young boys, and they wanted to give their mother a present. And so they decided on a house plan. And so they went and they bought it with their own money and presented it to their mother. And they were so proud. And obviously the mother was thrilled because hey, this is, they spent their own money, they earned it, they did the work to do it. And one of the little boys, though, was a little upset. And she said, well, what's wrong? And he said, well, there was this other plant that I really, really wanted to get you, but it was too expensive. It actually said, rest in peace on it. And she said, little concerned, obviously, why did you want me to get that? And he said, well, how many times have you said, I just want a little peace so I can rest? It makes sense, right? Well, then there was a little boy who was at church, and they were doing one of the children's programs up front, which is always so cute. But as happens, this little boy happened to forget his Lord. His mother happened to be sitting up front, and his only line was Jesus' line, I am the light of the world. So his mother was up front. You know how mothers do. You've seen this before, right? I am the light of the world. I am the light of the world. Trying to say it so he would catch it. And he, thinking. Finally, you could see it hit. The light shined in his eyes, and he said, my mother is the light of the world. Sometimes we think that, don't we? Now, sadly, for Mother's Day, it's not always the best day for some people. Because sometimes they don't have the best connection with their mother, or they haven't had the best response, or whatever reason that may be. Mother's Day is not always the best day for everybody. But I do have to say, whether biological or not, I think we all have had a mother figure in our life that has made us better, made the world better. We have had some influence, whether it's an aunt or a grandmother or a teacher, a neighbor. We've all had positive female influence in our lives. And it's interesting because if you look at the scripture, both in Matthew and Proverbs, it says nothing about the biological aspects of it, does it? It says nothing about that. All it says is what a mother should do, the attributes of a good mother. Now, granted, the Proverbs is talking about a wife, but it also extends to motherhood because it talks about her children and things like that. And so, let's think about moms. Think about moms who've made a difference in our lives and how we'll never forget that. So, today, we're going to do a little interactive sermon here. I'm going to be doing Mother's Day trivia. And whoever gets the most trivia answers correctly will get this orchid. It's very great. Now, I've also been told that sometimes they can be tough to keep alive, so all I have to keep it alive for is 2 days, so I'm good. Yeah, I swear, it's still blooming. We're good. So we're going to do a little trivia today. So to start you out, I'm going to do an easy one. What denomination started the modern take on Mother's Day? Great.
The Methodist.
Methodist Church. The Methodist Church. Not United Methodists. The Methodist Church. That means an old group. Before they were united. It actually was started by a woman by the name of Anna Marie Reeves Jarvis. Back in the 1850s. It was a Mother's Memorial Day. And then in 1865, she did something really interesting. It was after the Civil War. And there was a lot of conflict even between neighbors at that time. And so she created this Memorial Day, this Mother's Remembrance Day, an honoring day, to bring together everybody. Because pretty much everybody loved their mom. And so they would bring everybody together. So it brought a unity within the area through this thing. And it actually was an event that happened for years and years afterwards because of it. Then in 1912, the General Conference of the Methodist Church recognized her daughter, who took over after her, Anna Jarvis, as the founder of Mother's Day. She continued this idea even further on. And then in 1914, anybody know which president made it a national holiday? Anybody? 1914, come on, some of you remember that, right?
Wilson.
Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson made it a national holiday. He signed a resolution in the U.S. Congress to make it a national holiday. Now, understanding that when the Mother's Memorial Day, this mothers groups that were started, it had nothing to do with flowers or cards or anything like that. It was about honoring a mother even more so. It was about the work of women. This is a direct quote from the organization that still honors Anna Reeves. It was about the work of women and a significant testimony that women could give about the need for peace. So it started out as, again, these groups called mothers clubs. And it was helping younger mothers, mothers that were struggling, helping them out. It would be these more experienced mothers that maybe had their kids had moved out or whatever. And it was about them going out and helping all these other young mothers that may have been struggling. Maybe they didn't have their own mother to help guide them or direct them. And so it was a wonderful way for the church and for women to step out and reach out and help. So we're going to be talking about some of the women, the mothers, in the Bible. Now, I'm not going to take the easy route. I'm not going to talk about Mary because, well, I mean, she's an easy mother to talk about, right? She's awesome. I'm going to talk about some of the more obscure ones. So I'm going to test your little Bible knowledge here for a little bit. Now, I am going to start with Eve. I mean, it just makes sense to start with Eve. Literally the first mother, right? Eve, her name means living. And Eve is, of course, the mother, literally the mother of all people. She was at the very beginning. She was the first woman to ever give birth to a child. Okay, next trivia question. How many sons did Eve have that were mentioned by name? Not two. Three. It was three. There were three. Cain, Abel, and Seth. We kind of forget Seth sometimes. We always think of Cain and Abel because they were jerks. Well, okay, one was. The other one might have been. We don't really know much because he got killed by the other one. But there were actually three sons that were mentioned by name that Eve had. Although, it does talk about the fact that she had many sons and daughters. So I'll kind of give you that. But can you imagine being the first mother? She had nobody to give her guidance on what it was going to be like. Nobody was there to give her the extra notes. Okay, we're going to breathe through this. It's okay. She had no idea. No concept, really, of what was going to happen. Do you wonder what her and Adam were thinking as her stomach grew? Think about when she actually gave birth. That concept, that idea was so new. She may have seen the animals, but there's a little bit difference, right? I wonder if she knew what to expect. Because this was completely new. You wonder if she was ever afraid of being a mother. Because she had to literally give those children everything. They aren't like some of the animals who can kind of hop up and take off on their own and they're okay. It's different. It's kind of scary. But I wonder if she knew how important and influential a job a mom was. And, some may say, well, it's not really a job. Yeah, it is. I am not a woman, but I know a mom is a job. No doubt. Because, in fact, my wife has 3 children. I'm the oldest, but my wife has 3 children. Since the time of Eve and the beginning of motherhood, mothers have given themselves to raising their children in God. Mothers nurture us, they provide for us, they teach us, they discipline us. Mothers have the remarkable ability to change the world, one child at a time. Moving on. Jehoshaphat. Anybody recognize that name? I bet you, if I mention Moses, you know his name. Jehoshaphat was Moses' mother. How many of you guys know that? Anybody know that? Yeah. We don't consider his mother. We overlook his mother. Now, granted, Moses did a lot, let's be honest, but we overlook his mother. During the time that Moses was born, so the Egyptians had decided that the Hebrew people, there was getting to be too many of them. And so what they needed to do is start killing them off. So they decided, we're going to kill off all the males of the Hebrew people. And so they ordered the midwives, the Hebrew midwives, to kill them off. Well, I want to give some credit to the Hebrew midwives, though, too. They basically lied. They straight up lied. They said, oh, man, those Hebrew women, they gave birth so fast, we couldn't get there in time. That's literally what they said. I mean, that's not Bible speak, but that's exactly what they said. Okay? And so, Jehoshaphat had Moses. She protected him, watched over him, did everything she could. How long did she do that before the infamous boat ride? How long did Jehoshaphat keep Moses safe? I will tell you, it was months. But how many months? Anybody know?
Is it 9? 6, 5, 4, 5.
More than one.
2,
Less than 6.
4, 3.
Oh, I heard somebody say 3. Yeah. I mean, y'all are just guessing, which I mean, that's all you can do. It's like playing higher or lower. That's all you can do. It was 3 months. She actually hid an infant for 3 months. Now, granted, they were living in another area separate from the Egyptians, but she kept a baby hidden for 3 months. Finally, he got too big, too old, and she, of course, we know this is part of the story, she built a boat out of reeds and put it into the Nile River. Now, what she then did was have Moses' sister, Miriam, watching along the bank. So she was running alongside the water, making sure where he was going. Now, in my mind, I think she had a plan. I really do think she had a plan. Whether God gave it to her or not, I think she knew what was going to happen. She put him in the water at just the right time so that when he floated down, he bumped into Pharaoh's daughter who was taking a bath in the water. I honestly think she had it all figured out. And of course, cute little baby, he kind of almost falls in love with him right away, right? Okay, maybe not, but she did. She saw this baby, she thought he was adorable, decided that she's going to take care of him. But she had a problem. She was not the mother, and so therefore, she needed what was called a wet nurse. And this is, again, part of the unique mother's plan. She had told Miriam exactly what to do. So Miriam runs down to Pharaoh's daughter and says, hey, I know a wet nurse that can take care of your baby for you. And the princess said, oh, that's wonderful, go get her. Miriam goes back, gets her mother, Moses' mother, and she takes care of Moses and gets paid to do it. Is that not ingenuity? Isn't that wisdom? Isn't that smart? She figured out a plan. She had an idea. The circumstances were weird, they were different. But all good moms protect their children in whatever ways it may be. And sometimes it does mean letting them go. When we look at mothers who may have given up their children into foster care or to be adopted, sometimes that's one of the most powerful expressions of love that they can give, is by recognizing that they cannot do it, and it's going to be best for their child to let them be raised by somebody else. And it's tough, I get it. But I think we need to acknowledge those who gave that act. Again, circumstances are different from generation to generation, to culture, but good moms watch out for the safety and development of their children. Good moms keep them from danger and harm. Good moms guide, teach, and discipline their children. And certainly in this world that we live in, there's a lot that our moms need to protect us from. Now, next mom, Hannah. Now again, you may not necessarily recognize, you've heard the name Hannah before, but who is Hannah? Well, Hannah was the mother of Samuel. Now this is a pretty touching story, I have to say. Hannah was barren for many, many years, and she religiously prayed to God for a child. Again and again, she prayed, and she promised God, if you give me a child, I will give that child to you to serve you. Eventually, Hannah gave birth to Samuel. And when Samuel was old enough, Hannah took him to a priest to be raised. What was the name of the priest? Eli. Very good. Eli was the priest who was responsible for bringing up Samuel in the priesthood. So Hannah left Samuel with Eli to serve God. And it says that every year that Hannah would sew Samuel a new robe and bring it to him when her and her husband were offering up their annual sacrifice. So Hannah became an example of a mother being supportive of her child. Hannah gave Samuel to the Lord and allowed God to use him as he saw fit. We need to support our kids the same way. It may not be the path we always choose, but it is their path. Time and time again, we see children who may deviate from the plans that their parents have, but it's not a bad thing necessarily. Now, sometimes they need to come back, but not always. That's how we have people with different ideas and thoughts and processes. It's because they took a different path. I've said before, the weirdos are the most fun. They're also the ones that change the world. The ones who take the path that nobody else does. Sometimes it's the path that doesn't even exist yet. And we have an example of Samuel. He didn't have a lineage, a priesthood in his line, yet God chose him for that different path. And Hannah supported him, encouraged him. But she also encouraged him and supported him by bringing him to church, by helping him with his education, guiding social development, helping to reach individual potential and dreams. We should do that as well. Again, they may be different dreams than our own, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I point out the fact that how many of us did exactly what our parents wanted us to do? We have to think about it differently. Here's another unique name. Rizpah. Anybody remember Rizpah? Come on, she was in all the Bibles. Rizpah was, again, kind of an interesting one. It comes out of the book of 1 Samuel. And in chapter 21, there was a famine in Israel that had been going on for about 3 years. King David realized that this famine must be judgment from God, and so he looked to God for an answer. He knew something had gone wrong. He didn't know what it was, and so he approached God and said, God, what's going on? How can I respond to this? And so God revealed to David that it had to do with something with the Gibeonites. And that Saul had actually made a mistake. You see, many years before that, Saul had made a pact with the Gibeonites to basically have a truce. Well, Saul broke that truce and killed some of the Gibeonites. And so David approached the Gibeonites and said, how can I make this right? How can I bring a connection back through our people? And so the Gibeonites said, give us 7 of Saul's descendants so that we may put them to death. And they added the point, we're not only going to put them to death, we're going to leave their bodies out, exposed to the elements. Well, David did just that, because honestly it was either those 7 or the whole nation. And so he had a tough choice to make. So he sent 7 of them over. 2 of the men who were executed were sons of Rizpah. And here's where it takes kind of an unusual twist. You see, Rizpah sat beside the bodies of her 2 sons, exposed to the elements for 6 months. For 6 months, she watched over her 2 sons, the bodies of them. She wouldn't let any birds get to them during the day, no wild animals at night. And can you imagine sitting beside the bodies of your children as they decomposed, protecting them from everything? That's devotion. Devotion to her children. And a symbol of her love as a mother. She couldn't keep them from being killed, but she could guard the dignity of their bodies. So in honor of her devotion, what did King David do for her? Anybody? What did King David do for Rizpah? Anybody know? It had to do with the bodies of her sons.
They brought the bones.
But she had... Somebody's being smart and actually looking it up in their Bible. I told you what chapter it was. Yes. He actually had her body, the bodies of the boys, brought home, and they were given an honorable burial in the tomb of Saul and Jonathan. So there you go. Here's another one. This is going to be our last one. Eunice. Remember Eunice, right? Okay, we're going into the New Testament. So, think, this is obviously a mother. Think disciple of Jesus. Think disciple of Paul. Whose mom was she? Come on. Disciple of Jesus. That's an easy one. Disciple of Paul. Think of some of the significant disciples of Paul that stood out. What was that? Timothy. Very good. Yes, Timothy. This was Timothy's mother. Now, what's interesting is Eunice was Jewish. She was Jewish and then converted to Christianity. Now, his father was Greek, and we have no record that he converted in any way, shape, or form. But it talks about the fact that Timothy grew in faith due to his mother and his grandmother. Grew in faith. Those important women in Timothy's life made the love of God real. The love of Jesus real. Paul said to Timothy in 2 Timothy, "But as for you, continue in what you have learned and have become convinced of, because you know those from whom you learned it, and how from infancy you have known the Holy Scriptures, which are able to make you wise for salvation through faith in Christ Jesus." Those women changed the life of definitely one of the most significant New Testament people. We actually have 2 books of the Bible named after Timothy. And it was because of these 2 women. Moms make such a difference in our lives. They play an important role in leading children to God, and Eunice is a perfect example of that. Children should learn from both parents, but let's be honest, the first few years are usually more about connection with the mother, right? Don't get me wrong, fathers play a part. But mothers have a special place. They have a special significance. And no, moms don't get nearly enough credit. We only give you 1 day a year that we're supposed to recognize you. You need another 364. But moms make a difference. Mom, they change our lives. Those mother figures, they may, again, not have the name of mom or mother or whatever, but they changed our lives for the better. And we may not ever give you nearly enough recognition, and you may never get a reward here on earth. But just think, there is somebody out there that will look to you and say, once you're both walking along the streets in heaven, thanks, Mom.